Xbox On. Welcome to Xbox On, the podcast with one host about one console, the Xbox One. I'm said host Jesse DeRosa, and on today's episode we'll be talking about the latest Xbox news for the week of June 25th, 2020, including Microsoft is officially pulling the plug on Mixer, 343 teases new details about Halo Infinite for the first time since the Korean War, EA held their EA Play live event this week, and more. Alright guys, successful job making sure that we as Xbox fans made sure that Sony fanboys didn't have a successful Last of Us Part 2 launch. I know we all did our very best in making sure we review bombed the hell out of that game because Sony's dumb and PlayStation's dumb and Xbox rules. So I want to give a special thanks to all of you who participated in the review bombing. Everything went according to plan, and I think we did an awesome job of telling all those developers at Naughty Dog that their creative vision doesn't matter simply for the fact that they are owned by Sony and that Xbox is better than them. So congrats on that. Just a really special shout out to the Xbox community. And then aside from that, we'll get into our comments and shout outs and whatnot from last week's episode. We'll just jump right in this week. We got a good handful here. So Dead Captain James comments in regards to my thing I said last week about how, if I ever did like a nerd culture or podcast that's not about Xbox, maybe that's about just some more general things in the nerd culture realm or whatever, maybe I would call it outside the box, but outside the box because this podcast is Xbox On, so I thought that was clever. But Dead Captain James says, "Joke's on you, I'm starting a podcast all about PlayStation called Outside the Box." Now, Dead Captain James, guys, go ahead. Feel free to start canceling Dead Captain James. Be sure to tell him that he's a pony and that he loves The Last of Us Part 2, even though we all know it's a stupid game for stupid people. Be sure to tell him a lot of really mean things and make sure that you make it as hurtful as possible because nothing's personal on the internet. So go ahead and make sure you trash that guy. And then our next comment here comes from my brother Josiah, who says, I'm trying to comment, but naked people keep popping up on my screen. So yeah. Next up, David White says, "Pretty weak that you've only played 58 hours of Destiny 2, not gonna lie." All right, guys, so David White here is a piece of shit. He's a pony. He's a Sony fanboy. So go ahead and please start, canceling David White. Remember, he's the one who thinks that The Last of Us Part 2 is a really good game, and he's the one who thinks that killing off all the important characters is the best way to make a sequel. So remember, David White's an idiot who thinks Last of Us Part 2 is a good game. We all hate that. Remember, we're Xbox. We don't like Last of Us Part 2. So go ahead and cancel David White. He's a loser. All right, our next comment here comes from Mr. Lindbert Bond, who says, "I always enjoy hearing you chat about food, so I was thinking about your favorite pizza type and topping." Finally, thank you, Mr. Lindbert. This is finally a real thought-provoking question. Speaking of outside the box, Dead Captain James, this is what I'm going to actually probably name my pizza podcast, Outside the Pizza Box. So this is a great question. Happy to answer it. Happy to divulge all about my favorite pizza toppings. So I'll be pretty honest with you, I went through a pretty rebellious phase in my teenage years where I simply thought that the whole world was overreacting about how, there's nothing better than a classic pepperoni pizza. I think if you think about pizza, obviously everyone's concept of pizza in the Western world, or more particularly maybe even in North America, where we're obsessed with our cheap, shitty pizza. I've never been outside this country, but I'm gonna venture to say that the mass majority of the world's concept of pizza is probably shitty pizza. Brands like Domino's and Pizza Hut have taken over the world. I bet no matter where you live, pretty much your basic concept of pizza is probably some shitty delivery pizza. But that being said, everyone's basic concept is cheese and pepperoni. Probably more so pepperoni. Cheese is more like the kind you get when you're like 7, But I gotta be honest, I went through a long phase, probably sometime starting in middle school through my high school years, where I was feeling really rebellious. I wanted to be really anti-culture, and I was all about that whole pepperonis are really overrated take on pizza. I think there are lots of better takes. And during those years, I was very experimental with my pizza preferences, and I definitely explored the spectrum, so to speak, when it came to this slice of pie that we all come to love. And so, yeah, I went through a phase where I was really into this combination of green bell peppers and bacon on pizza. Yeah, green bell peppers and bacon. And I thought it was actually a really good combination. I actually stand by it to this day. It is a pretty damn good combination of pizza. If you've never tried it, it's definitely worth a try. I find that it goes best with like a thinner New York slice. So I went through a long phase where like that was kind of my thing. And then towards the end of my experimental rebellious phase, I found that I really like just like grilled chicken on pizza. So like of like the popular fast food pizza chains, I actually quite enjoy this from the Domino's. I enjoy just, one topping is just grilled chicken. I think it's actually a pretty solid topping. And my girlfriend, when we first started dating, she thought that was kind of a crazy take. She thought that was quite heinous, but I got her into it. And now these days, when I ask her what topping she wants on her pizza, oftentimes she says grilled chicken. So what do you think about that, you fucking idiots? I got people hooked on chicken pizza. So I guess what I'm trying to say is there have been different phases of pizza for me. I think when I was really young, I really liked sausage pizza. But as I've grown older, I guess what I should have prefaced is pizza's probably about like a good 75% of my diet. I try to eat pizza minimum of 2 times a week. It's very important to me that I do that. And as I've gotten older, I've really kind of mellowed out and stopped trying to be so cool and go against the grain. And I've really kind of come back from running away from home so much and found that pepperoni pizza is good. It's comforting. It's delicious. Sometimes it's not, the thing I'm feeling, but I really like a good pepperoni pizza. It's as I've gotten older and as I've calmed down and stopped being so rebellious and angry at the world, I found that kind of calming of my personality has really paralleled with my pizza tastes, and that pepperoni has really grown on me in ways that I'd never understood throughout my life, and I now am able to kind of understand where the appeal comes from. So these days I gravitate towards the typical pepperoni pie, but I love Italian lovers pizzas. Like anytime you throw like shit like onions and peppers and sausage and pepperoni and all that crap on a pizza, I love that stuff. I don't really think there's such a thing as bad pizza. I don't know if I've ever really had like a bad combination of pizza toppings. I will say I've never tried the sardine pizza. I know that's like a common joke for kids, is like, oh, sardines, that's a gross thing to put on a pizza. I've never had it. I can't really speak to it. I know the pineapple ham combination, the Hawaiian pizza, as they call it, is a very controversial take. I know the kids on the internet like to get very up in arms about the pineapple on pizza thing. Honestly, as much as I'll be honest with you, I enjoy pineapple pizza. I enjoy Hawaiian pizza. It is never my go-to, is never my number one pick. But if it's there, I'll have a piece. I don't mind it. I think people overreact about how bad it is. I think the sweet savory combination is just fine. It's not my go-to, but it's not offensive either. And I think people are simply overreacting about that. But yeah, I think these days I default to the pepperoni. Every now and then I'll go for like a Supreme or an Italian Lovers kind of deal. But yeah, the classic pepperoni, you just can't beat it. It's like the one topping you put on a pizza it's both complimentary but not overbearing. A lot of times, a Supreme pizza or an Italian Lovers pizza kind of thing will sound very good, or even a Meat Lovers pizza will sound very good. But what you find is after a slice or two, you get tired of it because it's just such an overwhelming combination of flavors. But that pepperoni, it takes the cheese pizza and twists it by adding that flair, that greasy, meaty flavor, but it's not overdoing it to the point where, 2 slices of pepperoni pizza and you're tapped out. Pepperoni, that's the kind where you can keep going. You can do the whole box by yourself, and I gladly do pepperoni pizza, an entire box by myself, and that's something I pride myself on, is the amount of pizza in which I can eat. And these days I find myself consuming lots of pepperoni pizza. I'm sorry to get so in the weeds about it, but you asked me a very compelling question, and I think I gave you a compelling answer. So I hope you enjoyed walking down memory lane a bit and kind of going over my personal tastes and opinions regarding pizza. And please feel free to share with me your favorite types of pizza. I'd love to hear not just from you, but from anyone. Tell me all about what you like from pizza, what you like on your pizza. Tell me what you like on your pizza. I don't care. Everyone likes something different, and I'm not here to judge. Even if that's something as obscure as putting a jock strap on your pizza. That's your thing. I'm happy for you. Our next comment here comes from my brother again. He's coming back again this week. He goes, almost everything that comes from WB Games is a licensed title, so I doubt Microsoft would pick them up. And this is, of course, in regards to the news last week that WB Games or AT&T might be looking to spin off WB Games and sell them to potential buyers like Activision or Ubisoft. But he says, that being said, Back 4 Blood is being published by WB Games, so if Microsoft bought WB, maybe we could see that as the beginning of Microsoft getting their hands on one of the coolest studios in the industry. That is, of course, Turtle Rock Studios, the developers behind Back 4 Blood, who were the original, of course, developers of the first Left 4 Dead before they sold it to Valve, and then Valve made the sequel for Left 4 Dead. So this is an interesting one because, and we'll get into this a little more with Lethal Migraine's comments coming up, and it's that, I don't know that the acquisition of WB Entertainment comes with the IP. I think it was something like the potential, the sales number they were talking about was like potentially for like $4 billion. So I assume that like for that kind of money, you get some IP. The thing is, I don't think it's about really how much money they're giving you for the IP. I think it's really about like where contracts are tied up. WB Games is kind of a weird situation where like some of the licenses they have because they're WB and some they have through certain contractual obligations. So I don't think because you buy WB Games, you automatically get the licensing for like Lord of the Rings and Harry Potter and all that stuff. I think in some of it you get automatically and some of it you don't. So things like Back 4 Blood, like, yeah, if you buy that, you probably get Back 4 Blood from Turtle Rock, but I don't think you get like Batman and Lego and all that shit in one felt swoop just because you bought WB Games. We don't really know the ins and outs of that, so it's kind of purely speculative. And that's what kind of intrigues me the most about this is like, is this purchase worth it? Are you just buying the development talent, or are you also getting the intellectual properties behind what, the games these studios make? So I don't really know. None of us really do. So that's, I think, the big telling point of all this. But yeah, I mean, I still am not a fan of Microsoft buying them, and we'll get into that with our next comment here, which comes from Mr. Lethal Migraine, who takes umbrage with my approach and my opinions last week regarding this story. He says, Jesse, come on, man. Nobody's better set up to buy WB Games than Microsoft or Xbox. He says, he breaks it down to 3 points. He goes, 1, last earnings call in April, Microsoft had $125 billion of cash on hand. Number 2, buying WB Games would get Xbox a comic book game. For those people, I personally couldn't care less. That's what he says, but I also agree. And then number 3, he says, they could keep all the WB Games multi-plat and have a ton of things to put on Game Pass, which in and of itself would get a lot of people to subscribe. So while for the most part these are pretty valid points, I think I guess where I came from was that I really came from it last week from more so from the perspective of his point too, where like I personally don't give a shit. I'm not a huge superhero fan in general, with the exception of like Spider-Man. And DC in particular is where I really don't give a shit about superheroes. Like, I don't care about Batman. I've never thought he was a compelling character. I just don't care about the Joking Man or the Superman or any of that stuff. So it just doesn't resonate with me whatsoever. I don't really care about Harry Potter. In fact, I actually kind of loathe Harry Potter. I think it's kind of a hilariously bad universe. I don't like Hogwarts or the magical British men. I don't think it's a very fun universe at all. I think that franchise is like way overblown in terms of popularity. And then as far as like Tolkien goes and Lord of the Rings and all that, that's a thing where like I respect that property. I think it's cool. I get why it's so beloved, but it's not one that personally resonates with me. So just for me, it's like it came from this perspective of like, I seriously don't give a shit about WB and the IP they hold for the most part. I do care about their development talent because they do have some great teams. They have NetherRealms, they have Avalanche, they have Rocksteady, so they could make some very fantastic games with or without that IP, thanks to the talent, of course. But that's really where I was coming from. I don't really give a shit about this move because I don't care about these properties. But of course it would be a smart business move just for the sake of having more things. Now to your point about them buying WB Games, keeping a lot of these franchises multiplat and then using Game Pass as a way to entice people to subscribe and play the games on Xbox, I disagree with this. And I think Phil Spencer's kind of spoken to this in recent interviews where he said like he kind of agrees that, putting things like Cuphead and Ori and the Blind Forest and things like that on a Nintendo Switch and stuff has been a little bit of a mistake, in that they're going to try to reel that back from now on, with the exception of like Minecraft just being a multi-platform thing. I think Microsoft's made it pretty clear that they're not going to really be doing this much more, this whole multi-platform thing when it comes to games they own. And I think that's the right move. I don't know. That's almost an example of Microsoft being like, too consumer friendly, where they're like just giving everyone access to play anything on any console. It's like it gets to a point where it's like, okay, you got to have some exclusives to really make the Xbox brand enticing. And I think if you buy some like WB games, you go ahead and you let your Rocksteady game and your NetherRealm game be console exclusive. Of course, they're on PC as well, but that's when you draw the line and tell Nintendo and Sony to suck it, because you spent the big money on the Batman guys. That's, I don't know. I don't agree with making it multi-platform, and I don't think Spencer agrees with it, because he's kind of, like I said, he's kind of alluded to this already. But yeah, I think at this point, this is kind of harmful to the brand, because a lot of people keep using the whole Microsoft being so consumer friendly and open platform as an excuse to be like, well, that's why PlayStation's better, is because PlayStation games are only on PlayStation. Xbox just keeps putting their games everywhere. So why would I buy an Xbox and blah, 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 blah. And of course, at the end of the day, Microsoft cares about Game Pass subscribers, xCloud users, live subscribers, things like that, a lot more than they care about selling consoles. I think that optics is still important. So it's kind of like a delicate thing where you have to toe the line just so, where it's like, yeah, obviously they're not number one concerned about the number of Xboxes they're selling, but you gotta give a shit to a certain extent, just so it, you can kind of justify to the more mainstream audience why you have your box around. And so I don't know about buying studios just to keep their games multi-platform. We're seeing exceptions with things like Psychonauts 2 and The Outer Worlds, and that's because Microsoft is buying these studios while they're in the middle of developing games that have already been agreed to with third-party publishers to put these games on multi-platform. So that's why we're getting situations like that. But I think going forward, like with Obsidian, we'll see it with Grounded, and going forward, that these studios are going to start making their games exclusive to Xbox and PC. So I don't know about that point. But Lethal Migraine continues. He goes, it's more than just Batman and Harry Potter, though. All the Lego games, all the Mordor games, the Mortal Kombat games, Injustice, and keep all the Lego games multi-platform, just like Minecraft, and roll in the dough. Do a Mortal Kombat versus Killer Instinct game. I am not a fighter game myself, but Amazon took the Killer Instinct team from Xbox a few years back, which is why those games dried up. NetherRealm would be a great replacement in the genre Xbox doesn't have. So that's a really good point too, actually, because Killer Instinct was actually kind of one of those sleeper wins, those sleeper hits for Xbox, where it was like Killer Instinct was a great game, people really liked it. It had a small and dedicated user base, but it wasn't like mainstream success. It wasn't like Doom, Bloodborne, and God of War numbers or anything. It is kind of sad that they don't have that, and this would be an opportunity for them to get arguably the best fighter studio out there. NetherRealm, the Mortal Kombat guys, that's the guys that make Mortal Kombat and Injustice. That's easily regarded as one of the best teams for that kind of game. So I agree with that. But again, this just falls under that thing where it's like, it's hard for me to be enthusiastic about this, because like I don't give a shit about fighting games. I don't care about Mortal Kombat. I don't care about the Mordor games or the Lego games or the Harry Potter games or any of that shit. So it's just hard for me to show any kind of enthusiasm. But again, I'm going to stand with that whole Microsoft needs to focus on talent that can make original IP for their consoles. I don't know. I think it's still weird to this day that PlayStation has an exclusive Spider-Man game on their console, although that one makes a little more sense just because there is that kind of corporate precedent set with Sony Pictures having the movie licensing from Marvel for the Spider-Man movies, and like PlayStation 3 having the Spider-Man 3 font for their console. There's just always been this weird kind of correlation and relationship and partnership with like Marvel, Spider-Man, and PlayStation or Sony as a parent company. So that one kind of made sense, even though apparently the story is that Insomniac chose to make Spider-Man. They weren't told to make Spider-Man. But that's like the rare exception of these studios making like, I don't know, exclusive games for their console based on like a popular IP. I just don't think, I don't know, to me that just doesn't sound cool, like Xbox getting out on stage and Phil Spencer being like, we got Batman and Harry Potter coming exclusive to Xbox Series X. Like, I don't know. That's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for like Xbox games. I'm looking for like Halo and new IP that feel authentically Xbox. I'm not looking for them to become the next Disney and just start buying all this shit that already has cachet with audiences, because that's just, I don't know, that's no fun. But whatever, that whole story about WB is still super speculative, so I don't want to dwell on it too much more. But Lethal Migraine, I appreciate your input and your opinions, and would love to know what your favorite pizza toppings are. So go ahead and let me know in the comments for next week's show. So that's going to do it for all of our comments, shoutouts, questions, concerns, dire needs from the audience this week. And remember, as always, guys, don't be shy. Reply. Next, we're going to get into what I've been playing, but of course, before I can ever tell you about the games I've been playing, as they are not nearly as relevant, I must tell you about what I've been eating. And I won't focus on this too much, as we did just do an extensive discussion on my pizza habits, but I had to say, the food game in my life has not been super exciting as of late. Obviously, we've all been dealing with the staying at home and the coronavirus and all this bullshit. So I don't know. I'm still not comfortable with really going out and sitting down in a restaurant and eating. So my food experience hasn't been all that exciting these past few months, and I'm really starting to get to the point where I'm feeling it. I'm just feeling that, like, I don't know, I'm just eating garbage. I'm just fucking rummaging through the fridge and eating like grilled chicken and asparagus and crap like that. So there's nothing really exciting going on in the realm of food for me. I desperately miss my Disney theme park food. That is a huge reason why I moved to the Sunshine State, the Florida State, the rainy state in the first place, is because I wanted to consume Disney theme park food on a regular basis, and just haven't been able to do that in a long time, and I really miss it. I could really go for some of those Disney French fries that everyone says taste like McDonald's knockoff fries, but I think are better than McDonald's fries. I could really go for some of those, or just I don't know. I miss it, but that's really where I'm at with food right now. I'm kind of jaded and sad, and just food has not been the bright spot of my life lately. But I will tell you what has been the bright spot of my life, as we will now get into the games that I've been playing. So Disintegration, I kind of put that on the back burner for the next game I've been playing. I plan on getting to that this weekend and kind of plowing through it and getting into it a little more. My brother did get Disintegration this past week as well. We tried to play some multiplayer together one night and just could not matchmake into a game to save our fucking lives. And so a quick little Reddit search showed that apparently a lot of people on both Xbox and PlayStation have been having matchmaking issues in the game. And so I haven't really been able to determine if it's like low player count because no one bought the game, or if it's like server issues. But when I'm finished with the next game I'm playing, I will go back to Disintegration, finish up the campaign, and give multiplayer another try. Hopefully whatever the problem is will have been ameliorated by then, because I would really like to play more Disintegration and show my support for V1 Interactive and hopefully get some multiplayer fun out of it with my brother. But unfortunately for now, Disintegration is on the back burner while I play, drum roll, game number 2, which is The Last of Us Part 2. That's right, guys. This whole show's a sham. 55 episodes down the drain. I'm not an Xbot. I fooled you all. I fucking hate Halo. I hope Halo Infinite bombs. I only care about The Last of Us and the Uncharted and the Spider-Man and the God of War. And I'm a real Sony fan, and I really like the Souls games. I really like games where you die 400 fucking times just to beat the next boss, to go to the next room where you die 400 times more. I love PlayStation. That's my shit. And I've been playing The Last of Us Part 2, you fucking Xbots. I fooled you all. Last of Us Part 2, I'm probably about 16 hours into it. Looks like it's about a 20, 25 hour long game. I think I'm pretty far. I think I'm approaching the third act at the very least. But I'll be honest, this game is such an emotional roller coaster in terms of how I feel about it. I was very excited for it going into it because I really do love Naughty Dog. I think Naughty Dog really is like, I don't think this is overrated to say at all. I know people widely consider this to be true, but I don't think this is one of those overblown statements. Naughty Dog truly is one of the great game developers of the modern era, and I think they deserve all the applause and all the credit in the world for the kind of way they've taken the AAA game and really pushed it forward with marrying, narrative and gameplay with gameplay with like narrative, and really pushing forward the boundaries of storytelling in games. I really do think they have done an excellent job of that. I think the Uncharted games were phenomenal. I think the first Last of Us was phenomenal. But I don't know. I guess this is what I forgot going into Last of Us Part 2 was that when Uncharted 4 came out back in 2016, whatever it was, I was super excited to play that and was by far the most disappointed in that game that I'd ever been in any Naughty Dog game ever. And it's such a conflicting way to feel because Uncharted 4, in my opinion, is undoubtedly the best Uncharted game from like a cutscene perspective and a story perspective. But from a gameplay perspective, it's the worst Uncharted game because the game, they try to open up the combat and the levels a little more so you can have like more approaches to combat and things like that, which I appreciate. But the problem is what they really ended up doing is just taking the platforming and dragging it out, taking the combat and dragging it out to the point where the game feels like it just like shoves in a bunch of really average gameplay as an excuse to get to the really rich and interesting story. And I totally forgot that that was my experience with Uncharted 4 going to The Last of Us Part 2. So I was expecting, like another Uncharted 2, Uncharted 3, Last of Us 1 kind of experience where like the whole thing is just so gripping from start to finish. But Last of Us Part 2, I think, has the exact same issue as Uncharted 4, where it's like, they made this game so unnecessarily long for no good reason at all. It's like the story is immediately interesting. The characters are immediately interesting. I will say Last of Us Part 2, again, I'm not even exaggerating. Best animation I've ever seen in a video game, period. Like, not only like the quality of the animation, but the amount of animation. They animate so much shit in this game. Like, you can interact with a door or fucking like pick something up or melee an enemy, and like 100 times out of 100 times, it's almost like you get a different animation. There's just so many approaches to the animation in this game, and I think that is an incredible feat in and of itself. That doesn't make the game all that more fun to play, but it makes it that much more immersive and interesting to look at and impressive and respectable from a presentation standpoint. So Last of Us Part 2 is so incredible to look at. The graphics are phenomenal. The facial animations are amazing. Just the animations in general are so varied. There's so many of them, so great looking. But the game immediately goes into boring mode where it's like a really interesting setup and then boom, the story just like plateaus. And then I kept forcing myself to play it because I'm very invested in the characters of this game and all this. And I don't know why I don't mean to talk about this too much. I know this is an Xbox podcast, but Last of Us is such an important story right now because it's kind of the biggest thing happening in gaming. And I know a lot of Xbox gamers are absolutely intrigued by what's going on right now. So this is somewhat tangentially related. And what Naughty Dog does is relevant to the whole industry because they really are spearheaders in terms of modern AAA games. But yeah, I mean, it's really as simple as this. Like, the story is absurdly compelling at the beginning, and then the gameplay immediately becomes Uncharted 4, where it's just, I'm so tired of like if I'm doing this simple task, why does it take me 2 hours of gameplay to just get to the next part where it's like, it's a really mundane thing I'm trying to do, but I just got to go through all these buildings and fight all these zombies and stealth kill my way through all these enemies just to get to the most mundane thing. And for the most part, it's kind of excusable because the game's good enough that I don't really care, And I guess the bigger problem here at large is that Naughty Dog makes like pretty average games from a gameplay standpoint. Like, the gunplay is fine. It's not great, but it's not bad. The platforming is like okay. It's not great, but it's not bad. Really, their biggest offense is that any Naughty Dog game in summation is basically just like square, 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 triangle, 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 triangle. It's like just, oh hey, lift me up. I'm gonna get this door. All right, open that door. Oh shit, it's locked. Okay, open this door. Shit, it's locked. Hey, let's see if we can find another way to get in there. And it's just, you just do that for like so many hours. It's like, I don't care how interesting the story is. At some point, you're just like, how fucking predictable is it that all I'm going to do now is try to open this door. It's locked. Find a way inside. It's locked. Move this thing here. Jump on this. Hey, lift me up. Door is jammed. Hold the triangle button so you can pry the door open. It's just so much of that mundane like shit. And I understand it's supposed to be like slow and explorative and everything, but to me, it just gets tiresome and obnoxious so fast. And my bigger problem is that, I'm not going to spoil anything. I know spoilers have been flying around about this game. I'm not that kind of guy. I wouldn't do you like that. But you get to the point in this game where you're like 14 hours in and you're like, oh man, it must be coming pretty close to the end of the game. And then boom, it throws this plot twist that's not even like compelling or interesting and just basically makes you, I don't know, it just infuriates me. I won't get into too much because it's spoilery, but like it's so infuriating, and then it sets you back so far and you have to do basically everything you've done before, but in a really extra mundane and boring way because it's just less interesting the second time around. So I'm really hoping that the final act really pulls it all together and makes me love the game. And I'm very certain that by the time I roll the credits, I will be a lot more positive about this game than I am negative, but I'm just very disappointed so far in this game from the perspective of like they just find the way to take this very like mildly above average gameplay and just drag it out so fucking far and make it to the point where it's like you're just sick of it. You're sick of it by the end of it. And it's really quite a shame because it's visually like the most impressive game ever. The animation is fucking mind-blowing. There's so much of it. It's so impressive to watch. It's so realistic to watch. The cutscenes are amazing. The character interaction is amazing. The writing and the acting is amazing. I think it's such a shame that people are shitting all over this game because of like whatever homophobic bullshit they have, you know, against this game. It's like the sexuality of Ellie, the main character, is not at the center of this game. And it's not the reason the character is who she is or any of that. It's like the character is gay and it's a total side point. It's totally unrelated. You don't have to be super fixated on it. This is such a weird game where this game is kind of the perfect example of how you tastefully handle, you know, sexual and racial and kind of diversity in game where, you know, Naughty Dog does a lot of that whole, like they're really focused on inclusivity and a kind of, you know, having that diverse opinions and perspectives and kinds of people in the game, down to the point where I think it's even more nuanced than just, you know, sexual diversity and racial diversity. I think they take an even more nuanced approach in The Last of Us by even having like a diversity of like body types and diversity of like facial types and a diversity of like, you have disabled people and you have people that like look objectively ugly in our main characters, which is really important because as much as progressive as Hollywood pretends to be, Hollywood isn't even remotely progressive because they only push beautiful people on you. And this game's not afraid to like make a quote unquote like unattractive person a main character. And it does a really good job of being diverse in more nuanced ways than just the, you know, the more popularly discussed kind of ways of diversity. I think Naughty Dog deserves a lot of applause for doing that. And what's more important than the fact that they do that is the fact that they do that tastefully. You might remember about 5-6 months ago, I played Life is Strange 2, and I bitched and moaned about how it's such an out-of-touch, tone-deaf game where they try to do diversity for the sake of diversity. They try to explain, like, the immigrant story and you know, the story of, like, the plight of, like, the Hispanic American and the racism and the struggles they face, and it falls on deaf ears because they fail so fucking hard at making those characters compelling and that story realistic and believable and making you care about it because the game kind of sucks and the writing sucks. But like The Last of Us Part 2 is like so far in the opposite direction where this game isn't heavy-handed at all. It's like, yeah, Ellie's gay, so what? And they don't make it a big deal. And, you know, you have a good racial diversity in the cast, but it doesn't ever feel like they're just trying to do that Hollywood thing where like, oh, let's get one black person and one Asian person and one Hispanic person, and the Hispanic person will talk about how they love their home country and the black person will have, you know, whatever, you know, and they'll just try to do the whole diversity approach. And this game doesn't do that. It's like every character is the character they are, and their race or their sexuality and all these things have nothing to do with it. They just are, and it just feels very natural, and it feels like, I don't know, to me it feels like Naughty Dog has mastered like how you do diversity in gaming. So, and I only bring all that up not to say, you know, like not to push my political agenda or whatever, although I don't think this should be a political thing at all. It's a shame that people feel that way. I bring this up more so to say the people who are shitting on this game and the people who are review bombing this game, I know I joked at the top of the show, but the people who are review bombing this game and trying to use, you know, like these fucking scapegoats about like how it's an SJW game and they're so fixated on, you know, the diversity and all that. These people couldn't be more wrong. And this is clearly people looking for excuses to hate the game and not actually hating the game. You can tell these people haven't played the game for a single fucking second, because if they played the game, they know this game is not offensive to anyone the least bit. It handles everything so tastefully from the point of like a narrative and a story about, you know, different perspectives and inclusivity and diversity. The story is incredible. And I don't think, you know, if The Last of Us Part 2 was a movie or a TV show, I don't think I'd have a hard time recommending this to absolutely anyone. It's just that good. I think pretty much with this game, solely the issues lie in the pacing of the game and the gameplay just not being all that interesting to begin with. I think that's really what it's about. And really the thing, and I'll end on this because I'm so sorry to make this, you know, a podcast about The Last of Us, a PlayStation game, not even an Xbox game, is I'll end on this note, which is that The Last of Us Part 2 reminds me so much of a point I made last September when Gears 5 came out that I felt at the time was like a really controversial thing to say, and I was worried a lot of people would give me shit about it, but the more I think about it, the more I like really double down and stand by this point, which is that I think Gears of War 5, or Gears 5, I know it's not of War, it's Gears 5, does just as good a job as any Naughty Dog game or Sony Santa Monica game or anything of doing this like really important, like really great storytelling and cinematic feel with gameplay and kind of making stories front and center and pushing the medium forward. I really think Gears 5 did such a great job of doing this, with the exception of the ending, which I think was kind of a scapegoat ending. But for the most part, I thought that game did such a good job and didn't get the credit it deserved for doing it. And I think like even more to this point, like I really doubled down on that now, because Gears 5, what it does so elegantly, or so flawlessly, I should say, is that it does this amazing magic trick where it takes the Gears of War formula, which is now over 10 years old, and it brings it into the modern era and makes it feel like Gears of War while also feeling like something new and modern and fresh, which is in and of itself an amazing feat. It also takes the Gears of War universe and makes the characters infinitely more compelling. It makes the story way more engaging. It makes, it emotionally way more, there's just so much more gravity and weight to it, which is amazing, which is all I ever asked for in a game, because I really love the idea of video games being a serious medium of storytelling. But then what Gears of War also does is it marries the already awesome gameplay with the story so well, to the point where it's like, and maybe Gears of War has it a little easy because it's a universe where there's literally a war and you play as soldiers with guns, so there's kind of that easy excuse for why you're constantly mowing shit down with guns. But the game never toes that line of like the story is getting lame but the gameplay's fun, or the gameplay's starting to get stale but at least the story's good enough to pull you through the end. Gears 5 actually just stays really fantastic on both fronts from start to finish, with the exception of that one part at the end where you have to make a decision, where I feel like that was a little bit of like a cheap out for the developers to not have to, for the studio to not have to really make a real ending. But other than that one caveat, I think Gears 5 does this so flawlessly, and I wish, developers like Naughty Dog, and I'll give them the credit for really spearheading this kind of movement of like amazing storytelling and gaming forward. I really wish they would evolve with this and kind of realize that, like, when it comes to these Uncharted games and these Last of Us games, I know their characters and their worlds are amazing and these stories are amazing, but the gameplay is starting to get really fucking stale. And I'm really tired of watching critics just blindly defend the shit out of these games and give 10 out of 10s because you're supposed to love everything Naughty Dog does and everything that's on PlayStation, and it's supposed to be a masterpiece and all that shit, where it's like The Last of Us Part 2, like, again, I haven't beaten the game yet. Don't get me wrong, it's a great game. If you're going to give it a high 8 or a low 9 or a mid 9 or something, that's like, whatever, you can justify it. But going around flaunting this 10 out of 10 everywhere you go, it's like, I don't see how you do that, because if you really strip away the amazing narrative and the amazing animation and everything, the game is really kind of mediocre to good at best in terms of its gameplay. Its gameplay is not bad. I'm not saying it's a bad game in terms of the way it feels and plays, but it's nothing groundbreaking and it's not addictive. It's not an addictive game loop. Think about it like this. If you played an Uncharted game or a Last of Us game and the story was very mediocre and paint by numbers, you would say that game sucks, because the game doesn't back up, isn't strong enough from a gameplay standpoint to justify a poor narrative. If Gears of War has a bad story or a mediocre story or whatever story, which a lot of, arguably some of the earlier Gears of War games have that, although I know a lot of Gears diehards would defend that to the death, that every Gears game has a great story. But if you had a Gears of War game with a bad story or a mediocre story or a forgettable story, you'd still have a pretty good time with that game, because the gameplay is so good, because the gameplay is so fun and addicting. The loop is so solid. And that's the difference here, is that, again, I'm right there. I'm first in line when it comes to having the conversation about how we need to make, the narrative in gaming stronger. We need to take gaming more serious as a medium for art and for storytelling. But also, don't forget, at the end of the day, your game's supposed to be fun. And I agree, not all games have to be super fun. I get some games get to be like Gone Home, and they get to be like these 2-hour walking simulator emotional experiences that are really great despite not being quote unquote fun games. But when you're making a game like Last of Us Part 2 and you demand 20 to 25 hours of my time for this game that's supposed to have gameplay and story, it's like, I would like for the gameplay to feel compelling. And that's why I think God of War is a way better PlayStation exclusive, because God of War has far superior gameplay along with a great narrative, just like Last of Us Part 2. So I'll get off that tirade. Again, sorry, I know this is obviously an Xbox podcast, but I'm sure a lot of you are pretty interested, not just because, Last of Us 2 is a super big thing in the news, but because there's always that interest in what, the opposite team, the enemy team, is up to, right? So, when PlayStation announces a new console, we're going to talk about it. When something as big as The Last of Us 2 comes out and has such a divisive reaction, like it's having Star Wars Last Jedi reactions here with like critics praising it and users hating on it, but it's selling like crack. It's you got to talk about it. It can't be ignored. So that's where I am with Last of Us Part 2. Let me know what you think about it if you're playing it. Let me know if you think I sounded ridiculous, but I'm glad I got that off my chest. So maybe that's a topic for Outside the Box. Maybe I should have saved it. Or maybe Dead Captain James can talk about it on Outside the Box. I'd love to hear your thoughts. But I also, as a side note, I know that demo this week happened for Grounded for Xbox Insiders. I actually really wanted to try that out, but I didn't try to get into it until it was too late. It said like all the participant slots had already been filled and that I couldn't get in on it. And I was a little bummed out about that. But I was also really happy to hear that it seems like for the people who did get in on this Grounded demo, people seemed really into it. People seemed like they were really having a good time and that the game is surprisingly pretty damn good. So that's really surprising and nice to hear, just because you look at these games like these smaller Xbox first-party games and you just expect people to shit on it because it's Xbox. But it's nice to hear people saying that this game's actually really good. But I guess we should expect no less from Obsidian, as they have a phenomenal track record. But I'm definitely excited to play that next month when it gets into early access, and even more so now as people seem to be really high on it. So with all that bullshit out of the way, as I've mastered the whole 4-hour podcast about, doing 45 minutes of recording before you even get into the news, we will now transition from my talks of pizza and PlayStation exclusives and get into proper Xbox news, of which we have some really great stories this week. So I'm excited to get into this. Our first story this week, and this is get your tissue boxes ready. This one is a heartbreaker, but while many have been expecting this news for a while now, it still comes as a surprise to relay that Microsoft has announced this week that their Mixer streaming service will be shutting down for good starting next month. The quote from the press release reads, "From the beginning, Mixer has been about creating the most engaging and interactive live streaming experience. We set out to help streamers build great communities based on deep engagement with their audiences. You all have been amazing throughout this journey. The Mixer community has set the industry's bar for welcoming and inclusive communities, and you should be proud of what we have accomplished together. Ultimately, the success of partners and streamers on Mixer is dependent on our ability to scale the platform for them as quickly and as broadly as possible. It became clear that the time needed to grow our live streaming community to scale was out of our measure, and with the vision and experiences that Microsoft and Xbox want to deliver for gamers now. So we've decided to close the operations side of Mixer and help the community transition to a new platform," end quote. So obviously a little intermission here. As for what options streamers and Mixer partners have, they're essentially free to go and move to whatever platform now that they prefer. Of course, most will probably move over to Twitch. Microsoft does have a more specific and direct transition available for interested users. Microsoft has teamed up with, unfortunately, Facebook Gaming, of all things, to allow Mixer partners to transition over. The press release continues, "Beginning today, Facebook Gaming will make it easy for anyone in the Mixer community to join if they choose to do so. We will work to transition the Mixer community over the next few weeks. Starting on July 22nd, all Mixer sites and apps will redirect users to Facebook Gaming. Transitioning the Mixer community is a key part of broadening efforts that Xbox and Facebook Gaming are embarking on now, bringing new experiences and opportunities to Facebook, where every month more than 700 million people play a game, watch a gaming video, or interact in a gaming group," end quote. The partnership with Facebook, of course, doesn't stop there, as Microsoft plans to bring xCloud integration and technologies over to Facebook Gaming. So they wrap this press release up by saying, "Key to the vision is our Project xCloud technology, which we see delivering games to all kinds of screens and windows in your life, including those on Facebook. Gaming is already part of our social fabric, and Project xCloud can take you from discussing a new game, whether it's a funny in-game moment posted by a friend or an ongoing stream, directly to playing it. In the future, though, through the power of Xbox Live and Project xCloud, we will see there being just one click between I'm watching and I'm playing." So while there's no real explanation, this is me talking now, while there's no real explanation just yet as to what all the partnership entails, we will certainly hear more in the coming months or so. Clearly, this move shows Microsoft's direct competitive threat to Google with their Stadia platform that has integration with YouTube. The failure shouldn't come as too much of a surprise, though, to many, considering that Mixer growth has remained stagnant year over year, while competitor services have seen triple growth in recent months. Mixer was also reportedly run on a skeleton crew that never had an appropriate team size or project time to get the updates out the door in a timely fashion. Just like how we had to say goodbye to Groove as it went over to Spotify, or how we had to say goodbye to Windows Phone and soon never had a Microsoft phone until, now the soon to be released Microsoft Android phone. This is the next example in the long history of Microsoft pulling the plug on a beloved product/service that never really took off but always had a diehard fan base. So this is a super sad one for me, and I called this. You can go back to just a few weeks ago when those stories were coming out about people at Mixer being really just in low spirits and just kind of really overall not too enthusiastic about the outlook of this team and this platform. And so I think the writing's been on the wall. Obviously, last year when they made the big move to get, Ninja and Shroud and all those guys over to the platform, I think that was obviously a last-ditch effort saying, hey, could we potentially just buy the big attractions from Twitch, bring them over to our platform, and have that just be like a big burst of activity going on Mixer, and have that kind of act as a catalyst to start bringing people over to our service. And it seemed like it was going to work for like about a week there. It seemed like people were really jumping ship from Twitch. If you really read the way people were engaging with Mixer, there was a lot of discourse about like, wow, this service is really great. Why did I never give this a try? Wow, definitely saying goodbye to Twitch from now on. And so for a few days there, it felt super promising. Like Mixer was about to blow up overnight, and then Microsoft really, really made a bold move that was going to pay off for them. But immediately, within a few weeks of it, we saw, and I remember talking about this on the show, it was just like, wow, go over to Mixer. No one watches anyone stream. When Shroud or Ninja get on, numbers boost a little bit, but they don't even get the amount of viewers they got on Twitch. So it's just really not taken off. And this really hurts to, as someone who's been following Mixer since the early days when it was Beam. Well, I guess I really started paying attention right around the time Microsoft bought Beam, so I'm not going to act like I was there from day one, but Mixer it's another one of those Microsoft things where like anyone who's ever been a fan of Microsoft outside the realm of Xbox knows this, whether it was Windows Phone or Zune or Groove Music or any of this kind of stuff. You always know it's like Microsoft makes great services, great hardware, great platforms, and they're usually ahead of their time, and they usually have really great features and options that you don't find on competitive services or hardware or anything like that. They're always so ahead of the curve with this, and this is the problem, is Microsoft always undermarkets what they have, and they're not as aggressive about getting it out there, and they always do these things with like one foot in the door. They get really good talent to build these products and services and maintain them, and they garner, first of all, the really passionate Microsoft fan base, the people who are really enthusiastic about whatever Microsoft's doing, and then they garner, a new fan base along with that, and then that fan base alone keeps the project alive until Microsoft immediately is like, we'll do one more last-ditch effort and then pull the plug on it. And so the reason why I say I knew this was coming is because last year when they brought Ninja and all those guys on board with Mixer, I looked at it and it was exactly like when Microsoft bought Nokia and was like, hey, we're going to make Nokia the in-house Microsoft phone or team, and they're going to make all their Lumia phones now Microsoft branded, and then they released those last two Windows phones, the Microsoft Lumia 950 and 950 XL. And I'm sorry to get so out of the realm of gaming, but I saw this like when they released those phones as like a last-ditch effort along with like Windows Phone Mobile 10, and it was just one of those things where you saw it and you were immediately like, this is it. This is like the last thing. If this doesn't stick, they're jumping. And then like within a year, Windows Phone was basically all but abandoned after like the release of that. And then they like just wrote off the acquisition of Nokia. And I don't know, when I saw like Ninja and all these guys come over to Mixer, I was like, that's exactly what they're doing here again. It's another one of those Microsoft things where instead of saying, let's invest a serious team to come into Mixer, figure out what's going on and figure out how we can turn things around for these guys, they said, let's do like a short burst of money. Let's throw a little bit of money something big at it. And if that doesn't like act as a miracle and turn the whole thing around, we'll just give up on this project. And that's exactly what they did. They threw some really popular streamers at it, and they said, if these guys single-handedly can't turn Mixer around, we'll pull the plug on it. And the worst part is, just weeks ago or months ago, we heard, the stories of like Mixer employees talking about how they're running on skeleton crews and they just don't have the manpower to really turn these updates out in a timely manner, and spirits are low, and management's kind of being hard on the team, and all this shit is happening. And then I'm like, this isn't good. You can't just throw some popular streamers at the service and expect that to solve all your problems. You need sizable dev teams and realistic project timelines and things like that. But they just didn't do that. They did the Windows Phone thing. They did the Groove Music thing again, where they just last minute threw some money at it, said this better fix it all. It didn't fix it all, and then they gave up and pulled the plug. So I don't want to get into that too much. It just really sucks as a Windows fan, as a Microsoft fan, to see yet another really awesome, unique project just canned because of lack of proper attention and care on Microsoft's end. I think it's lazy that they do this, and I think with Mixer this is very lazy, where they literally say in the press release that Microsoft and Xbox aren't capable or whatever of helping Mixer become the platform they want it to be. It's like shit you are. It's like, tell me who is more capable than Microsoft of making something like a streaming service take off. Who has more money? Who has more technology? Who has more, talent at their fucking company to make something like a successful streaming service take off than Microsoft? At the top of the list, you got like fucking Amazon. Well, they bought Twitch. You've got Google. Well, they have YouTube. You got Facebook. They have Facebook Gaming. It's like, who else is up there? It's like Apple and Microsoft. It's like, don't fucking give me that bullshit. That's such a lazy bullshit PR excuse right there. It's like, that's you saying you didn't try hard enough. And I don't know. It really sucks because I'll be honest, I've said on the show before, I'm not a huge streaming fan. I don't watch a lot of Twitch or a lot of Mixer anyway. When I do watch streams, I always try to support Mixer by using it. But, watching people play games, streaming, that's not really my thing to begin with. So I always like to think that maybe one day if I had a little more free time and if like any platform of mine ever took off, I would do maybe streaming on Mixer or something, and I wouldn't try to, be like cool Mountain Dew guy, like playing games and trying to show off. I would probably do more of like a casual thing where we just like play casual things, and it'd be a way for like me and an audience to interact. And I always just thought, that was the cooler side of game streaming, was a platform for like people with like-minded interests, being video games, to just be able to chill out and have discussions and just kind of shoot shit and hang out like a group of friends hanging out. And it's really sad that Microsoft's version of that is dying now, and that the worst part of all is they're partnering with Facebook. Now, this totally makes sense. As upset and salty as I am about this totally makes sense, because your first instinct might be, well, they did a very similar thing like this when Groove Music died. Groove Music, for those who don't remember, was originally Zune Music. It went through a short phase where it was Xbox Music, but then it eventually died when it was Groove Music, which was basically like Spotify before Spotify was a thing. It's another one of those things where like Microsoft was way too early to the game, and it just didn't take off because the market wasn't ready for it, and then they just never got really any traction. And then Spotify happened years later and took off, and now everyone acts like the only options there have ever been is like Spotify and Apple Music, but actually Groove / Xbox Music / Zune Music was there way before any of those services were, and it sucks. It's one of those things where Microsoft wasn't aggressive and dedicated to it enough, and it failed. And so now we're here with Mixer, where I've said this before, Mixer has so many features and little like nuances and like kind of meta options within the chat that makes it so interesting. Like there's leveling system and all this crap that just makes it so engaging and fun for the not only the streamer, of course, but the viewer. And I think that was so cool that Mixer had all those little bells and whistles. And it's one of those Microsoft touches where like you're never going to see this replicated in something else, maybe years and years down the road, and then people will act like it's new for the service that uses it, and everyone will forget that Mixer ever had it in the first place. And it's just such a shame, because this is going to get lost to time like everything Microsoft cancels. So, of course, your first instinct might be, well, if you're going to take the assets and the technology in the Mixer stuff and sell it off, to someone else and try to merge everyone over to a different service, you would think instinctively like, oh, well, it's going to be Twitch, because Twitch is the big one, right? Well, not exactly, because when you think about you think about Stadia, and I know we laugh about Stadia not being a real competitor to Xbox. This is something that Microsoft has to deal with and compete with, whether, it's doing well or not. They have to be agile and take it seriously as a competitor, because if they don't, what happens when all of a sudden Stadia actually starts doing well for some reason, Then Microsoft's fucking stupid for not having done something when they had the chance. And that's why they had to do something. And Spencer said this himself, he made that statement a few months back where he's like, no offense to Sony and Nintendo, but we're not really competing with them in the console space. We're more so competing with like the tech giants like Google and Amazon, because streaming and Project xCloud. Well, this is exactly what he's talking about. And this is why they're doing this, is because Stadia, it might not be doing well, but Stadia has this really nice advantage where it's like, oh, well, you're on YouTube, you're watching someone live stream on YouTube, which is a Google-owned service, and someone's playing a game, you're like, oh, the game looks cool, I want to play it. Well, it's as easy as like, well, try it on Stadia. Click on the YouTube button, and now you're playing Stadia. And those are really good integration features, despite the fact that Stadia kind of sucks. But Microsoft doesn't have an equivalency like that. They don't have a YouTube. They don't have a massive social media site where they can leverage Project xCloud. And Xbox on its own isn't big enough to handle that weight. I mean, Xbox is, of course, everyone knows what Xbox is, but Xbox isn't YouTube. Xbox isn't Facebook. So by partnering with Facebook, this is a really smart way for them to actually kind of compete directly with Stadia and with Google at large, which is that, much in the way that you can go onto YouTube and be like, oh, okay, well, I'm watching someone play Assassin's Creed 27, and I love it because I like bad Ubisoft games. And they'll be like, oh, well, I'm going to play this Assassin's Creed game. Boom, and now they're on Stadia. Well, now Xbox has a counter to that where they go, well, now we have Facebook and Instagram, where like if you're doing Facebook gaming or you're watching someone on Instagram, there's a game thing related, and you're like, oh, I want to check that out. Boom, there's Xbox buttons everywhere saying xCloud, Xbox, whatever. And now all of a sudden, Microsoft has a direct competitor to what Google's doing with YouTube and Stadia, but with xCloud and Facebook. And I know it sucks because everyone agrees, Facebook's the absolute fucking worst. I try to never use my Facebook. I fucking hate it. I'm definitely in that camp of like, if I could completely eradicate Facebook and Google from my life, I would happily do so. I try to limit my usage of anything either of those two companies do because I fucking hate them both. But this is one of those things where it's like, I'm not happy that it's Facebook, but I get why it's Facebook. Amazon, of course, being Amazon is really impressive. Their reach and everything is really impressive, but they own Twitch, and Twitch doesn't have something like that. Twitch doesn't have the amount of followers because Twitch is a platform where it's just for like video game streaming, and it's just a streaming service, and it mostly carries to the gaming community. But Facebook Gaming has the advantage of like, even if it's not everyone's default game streaming service, it is the world's biggest social media site. So whether it's Facebook Gaming or Instagram or Facebook proper, there's so many opportunities to get Xbox and Project xCloud in people's faces. And so that's why they go with this. And it totally makes sense to me, but it is just a big loss. It's a really sad thing to see. It's another one of those things where when Microsoft really puts their all into something, and when you see something take off, it's so exciting. And this is why I love Xbox. This is why I love Surface. This is why I'm even like a little nerdy about something as stupid and mundane and utilitarian as like Windows OS, because I just love the kind of quirkiness and creativity and just the growth or the kind of just, I don't know, the personality of Microsoft products and services. I just really am a huge fan of Microsoft. And this is one of those things where, again, the overall Microsoft umbrella brand just waned a little bit, just became a little more diluted because they're doing that modern Satya Nadella era Microsoft thing where rather than Microsoft going on their own and making something, they're partnering with someone else and kind of doing a half and half thing, And I understand they follow the money and this is smart from a business perspective, but from a fan perspective, it's disappointing. It's just like how I'm really excited for that Surface Android phone that's coming out pretty shortly, but at the end of the day, it's always going to be a little sad that it's not a Windows phone. It's a Google operating system with Microsoft hardware and apps. So it's just one of those things. Now Mixer's going there, and we hold on to the things we love from Microsoft and hope that we never see them dilute anymore, particularly Surface and Xbox, which, fingers crossed, have been doing well over the years and hopefully continue to just do better and better because, I don't know, it sucks. This could be Xbox one day. You got to think about it like this. This could be Xbox someday in the future. Xbox is like, oh, well, you know what? Xbox Game Pass is a subscription service that you download on your PlayStation 7, and that's how you play Xbox. Microsoft stopped making consoles. You just play Xbox games on your computer or your PlayStation or your Nintendo through Game Pass and Project xCloud. It's like, maybe that's where we are in the future. But it's sad to think about because it's just another example of like the things we love as Xbox or Microsoft fans just kind of getting diluted just a little bit more. And it's sad to see, but rest in peace, Mixer. Let me know what you think about that story at all. It's a crazy story. And also, sending out my good wishes to all the Mixer streamers out there who are now kind of streaming homeless now. They got to find new platforms, try to get their audiences to follow them on Facebook or Twitch or YouTube or wherever they decide to go from here. And all the best to everyone affected by this who's a streamer or a partner who now has to basically just change everything about their platform to try and accommodate this new massive change that's happening. So it looks like Shroud and Ninja got off scot-free because what we're seeing now from the reports is that they made like a good chunk of millions of dollars and now are free agents to go basically do whatever the fuck they want. So if they want to go back to Twitch or do something entirely different, they're kind of contractually free to do whatever the fuck they want, which is pretty cool for them. They made out like bandits in this whole thing. So at least there's that silver lining, I guess. But yeah, that's our Mixer story. Now we will move on to some much more exciting and lighthearted and uplifting news, which I didn't even write anything about this. I'm just excited to talk about it. But a new audio clip from the official Halo Twitter account has been released, actually as of today, the day I'm recording this, and it strongly implies the Banished, a rogue group that broke off from the Covenant, will be in Halo Infinite. So yeah, the Halo Twitter page and the Halo Twitter account and the Halo YouTube page just uploaded like this video, this static video with audio of this Banished, just like, for those who don't know, Banished are brutes, which are like the ape-looking things you fight in Halo 3, but they're a faction of the Covenant that broke off from the more like religious and sect and kind of did their own thing. They're the main enemy type you fight in Halo Wars 2. But anyway, the recording reads basically, the horror approaches, forces occupy the ring. Within hours, it will be under our control. Humanity will burn. Their brazen defiance will be all but a memory. No more prophets, no more lies. We stand together, brothers to the end. We are his will. We are his legacy. We are the Banished. So this is so fucking exciting just as like a fan of Halo and Halo lore, because there's actually a lot to divulge here. Because, okay, first of all, they say the hour approaches, the forces occupy the ring. They're obviously talking about the Halo ring, which is so exciting because at the end of Halo Wars 2, they create that new Halo ring and travel through slip space and then get stopped by that Guardian. So it ties Halo Wars 2 into Halo 5. So we know this whole universe is tied together now, where the events of Halo 5 lead into Halo Wars 2, and now all that's going to play into Halo Infinite. So we're going to get a continuation of that Halo 5 Guardians, Halo Wars 2 story, which is super exciting because I really love the whole like Rogue Cortana, Rogue AI, new Halo ring, Guardians kind of watching over thing. It's so exciting to see that. And then they talk about no more prophets, no more lies. That's, of course, a reference to the Banished because they defy the religious sect of the Covenant. It's called like the Jewel Madama. So that's like the Halo 2's Covenant with like the prophets and everything. So, of course, it's a direct reference to kind of the Banished being their own sect and kind of operating independently. And then it says, we stand together, brothers to the end. We are his will. We are his legacy. So this is a direct reference, I assume, to Atriox, which is the Banished leader that you fight in Halo Wars 2. So basically saying that the Banished made it to the new Halo ring and that now Chief's going to get there in that Pelican with that UNSC pilot that he meets in that trailer from E3 last year. And he's going to get there with the Spirit of Fire from Halo Wars 2. And basically it's going to be like this ragtag team of like UNSC fighting the Banished, and I'm fucking excited to see what this is going to happen. They're going to have Fire Team Red, and then yeah. So this is super exciting because basically what this confirms is Halo Infinite, which we kind of already knew, will take place on a Halo ring, and then you'll fight the Banished, which is going to be like fighting brutes in Halo 3. So if you enjoyed the Halo 3 enemy variety, you're pretty much going to have that. And then there's, of course, the strong rumors that the Flood might be in this game as well, which would be, in relation to the DLC from Halo Wars 2. So if this happens, this really all plays in quite beautifully because the Halo Wars 2 story plays into the Halo 5 story, and of course Halo Infinite is Halo 6. 6, so it's a continuation of that Halo story. But we also know that Halo Infinite is kind of a spiritual reboot for the franchise, just to kind of reel it back into more of like the Bungie era of Halo, which makes so much sense that you take it back to a Halo ring, you take it back to like a faction of Covenant, because that's what people loved and knew Halo for back in the old days. So this all ties in so well. And then we might even have the Flood, which is, the thing that people are always begging and bitching about, is wanting to fight the Flood, which I don't really know why. I'd rather fight Covenant and Prometheans, but regardless, I love all enemy types in Halo, so I'm just excited for whatever the fuck they do. But this all really like just gels well and kind of just comes full circle. So it's super fucking excited to see 343 basically come out and just confirm, like, yeah, you're going to be fighting the Banished. So, and what I really love about this is, from a narrative perspective, this is a really elegant way to bring the Covenant into the Halo universe, because I think Halo 5, I don't like to shit on it a lot because I know people are way too hard on that game, but I do have my criticisms of it. And one of them is, there's the Halo 4 and 5 kind of come up with like bullshit arbitrary reasons to wedge the Covenant into those games, just because they know Halo fans expect to fight the Covenant in a Halo game. But they do that kind of like, oh, well, on the out, there's like these factions that are still fighting and all that stuff. But the Banished are a really good excuse to bring the Covenant into the Halo universe while also narratively justifying it, because it's like this certain sect that broke off from the Prophets and went and did their own thing, and so it's like a whole new enemy type in a way, and that also gives them the free reign at 343 to kind of reinvent the art style and the design and the lore behind these guys, because it's not the same Covenant you fought in like the old school Halo games. It's a new breed, and it's just so cool to know that like we'll get to fight the Banished now, not just from a top-down RTS perspective, but from like a first-person traditional Halo, like guns shooting, Master Chief in the face kind of Halo way. So it's just really, really exciting stuff. And obviously, I guess all this story really confirms that those toy leaks were indeed correct, that the Banished will be in Halo. So this is all super exciting stuff for Halo fans. Keep in mind, we are just weeks away from the July stream where we're going to finally see actual Halo Infinite like gameplay reveal and a more proper rollout for that game. Also, keep in mind that they said there would be a Halo Infinite multiplayer beta at some point before the game came out. It's kind of like what they did with Halo 5. If this game is supposed to come out this fall, presumably October, November, that means this multiplayer beta should be happening, I don't know, in like August. So we might be playing Halo Infinite in some capacity in the next few months. So I don't know. I'm just really fucking hyped on Halo. I'm always hyped about Halo, but this got me really, really excited. And Halo's like the one franchise where I can like jump up and down like a little child and get super pumped about. So I'm really high on Halo today, really excited, and really hoping that 343 against all odds pulls this game off and really makes people re-fall in love with Halo. And just, it would be really, really exciting just as a Halo fan, as an Xbox fan, especially after the Xbox One days of people just constantly shitting on Xbox, for the Series X and for Halo Infinite to come out this fall and to just kind of make everyone look like a dumb idiot and like just be like, oh fuck, I forgot Xbox can be good, and I forgot Halo is so awesome and I love this, and to just kind of make everyone really fall in love with this brand and this game again. So I'm really excited for Halo Infinite, if you can't tell. But let's continue to piss our pants in anticipation for that July event. Our next story here, our other big one, this is our last big one before we get into some smaller stories for the week, is that the EA Play live event took place this past week. It is their kind of E3 alternative they've been doing for a while now, and of course they did it all digital because we are social distancing and whatnot. So EA held their annual EA Play event this past week, but of course it was in digital format. During the event, we got updates on existing games, new game announcements, and some not so interesting stuff. So first up, we'll kind of break this down part by part. I don't want to dwell on this too much just because I feel like, we already know everyone hates EA, and a lot of this I felt like was pretty underwhelming, so I don't want to get too in the weeds about it. I don't want to end up being too critical and negative towards EA. I just want to get the news out there, put in some commentary, and move on to some more positive stuff. If you want to talk about Halo, we can just keep talking about Halo instead. Just vote now by texting the number HALO to text Halo to 343-354. And anyway, first up, so EA showed off some Apex Legends updates. They did a lot of stuff, like the game's coming to Switch and all that crap. But as far as Xbox-related news, they said the game is getting cross-play support sometime later this fall. So that's actually really exciting. So you'll be able to play with the PC and the PlayStation guys all in the Apex Legends, which is actually really awesome. Additionally, they announced that the Lost Treasures limited edition event will begin this week, but it was announced during the show, so that should be taking place starting like now, I think. Yeah, this is really exciting. Apex Legends continues to just dominate and be really big for them. I'm super happy for Respawn and in EA, I guess, as well. I just want to see Respawn do well. It makes me really sad that this is like, Apex Legends success kind of means like no more Titanfall for now. But Apex Legends is a really good game. It's the only Battle Royale I've ever been able to even remotely give a shit about. I've completely lost touch with what's happening in Apex Legends because I watched that reveal trailer for the Lost Treasure event and everything. I'm like, I don't recognize half these new characters. The game looks so cartoony and fun now. It looks like it's just gotten so far away from what it was a year ago when it first came out. But happy people are still loving Apex Legends. I'm sure it's still a really fun game. At some point, I want to jump back into it, and definitely once it gets cross-play support, play with some of those PC nerds. Maybe get my nephew to finally play a game with me, since he can't do anything that's not on his 120 hertz refresh rate PC boy game. Anyway, our second story here from the event is that Hazelight's Joseph Fares announced the new game It Takes Two, the studio's next game following Brothers: A Tale of Two Sons and A Way Out. It's a co-op action adventure platform game that will, as he says, blow your fucking mind. It's his quote, not mine. It Takes Two follows a child whose parents are divorcing. To cope, she creates imaginary versions of them who must work together to make it through their story. The game is scheduled to release in 2021. I'm actually really interested in this game. I thought that premise is super, super... that's the kind of stuff I love. Those are the kinds of stories I love, is like those coming of age stories about kids who just like fucking face the real world and feel hurt and like escapism. Like that's like the kind of that's like the kind of fuel to like get me invested in a story. Is like make a coming of age story about a kid who's going through some tough shit. It's just, I don't know, I love that stuff. So this premise has got me super interested. I really love Joseph Fares's kind of approach to games. He's very much one of those, like, I want gameplay to serve narrative. I want to marry the two things together. So I've never really played any of his games. I've always wanted to try Brothers: A Tale of Two Sons. I think Lethal Migraine has said before that it's like his favorite game of all time. It's definitely been on my list of like games I've always wanted to check out, but just haven't really ever gotten around to. A Way Out, not so much. It just doesn't look like my thing, but I heard it was pretty good. For those who need a refresher, this is the guy who said like fuck the Oscars at the Game Awards a few years ago. So he's that guy who's he's just very much a character. He was that film director actually. Like this, he's not from Sweden, but he lives in Sweden. But he's actually a film director who turned game developer at one point. So this will actually be his third game, and I'm really excited to see how it goes. I'll keep my eyes on this one for sure. But yeah, It Takes Two is the name of the game. I recommend if that premise sounds interesting to you at all, definitely check it out. There's a trailer you can look into, but that was one of the more interesting announcements for me at this event. Next, they showed Zoink Games, the studio behind the game Fae, that EA original, announced a new game called Lost in Random. The game takes place in the world of Random, which is a, quote, dark kingdom where every citizen's future is determined by a roll of the dice. And then in 2021, the game will come out, following the tale of Evan and her sidekick Dicey to play at odds and break the curse. This game I was significantly less interested in, but I don't know, people seem pretty interested in it just because it has a very like Tim Burton-esque art style. So if you like that kind of dark, twisted, weird, whatever, Burbank, California thing that Tim Burton's always doing, you might be interested, at least aesthetically, in this game. So check that out. I wasn't too crazy about it, although I did think their last game, Fae, looked pretty interesting. It's probably a game I'll never get to, but always nice to see EA doing their indie support thing that they do. So next, they showed off Rocket Arena, a competitive third-person 3v3 hero shooter / battle royale looking thing that's all about using rockets to literally blow up the competition. It will be released actually pretty soon on July 14th. This is probably by far the game I was the least interested in. It just looks like the next generic Rocket League, Fortnite looking Overwatch game. So this is just another one of those games that's like probably just going to come out and get lost in the shuffle and never be heard of again. Not that that's what I'm hoping, but I'd have to try really hard to pretend I care about this game. It's just not my thing. I wasn't interested in it. But be sure to look that up if you're interested in another hero shooter, but with the twist being it's all about using rocket launchers predominantly and things like that. So that was announced. I don't know. I'm so tired of like the cutesy hero shooter battle royale thing. So I see a game like that and my brain just shuts off immediately because it's like that is this generation's equivalency of like last generation, when every game was trying to be like Call of Duty or Battlefield, and everything was like a gritty, gray, dark shooter game. Now that's where we are with this generation. Where like everything is a bright, colorful, fun hero shooter slash battle royale slash like just play this game all the time with your friends and forget the real world, because kids want to do floss dancing and blow shit up with rocket launchers. So no disrespect to you if you're looking forward to it. I just don't personally give a shit, or I can't muster the fucks to give. Then EA Motive showed off gameplay of their recently revealed Star Wars Squadrons. The campaign will have players assuming the role of both the New Republic pilot and Imperial fighter pilots as part of the Vanguard and Titan Squadrons, respectively. Multiplayer will include modes like dogfighting and all-out 5v5 battle and the signature mode Fleet Battles. Star Wars Squadrons will be released, of course, on October 2nd with full crossplay support. And there, of course, as they like to tout, are no microtransactions, which is something only EA has to brag about, because no one else is as guilty as they are for ruining players' time with that kind of shit. I'll be honest, I know I wasn't too high on this game last week when it got leaked and then revealed. I'm ever so slightly more interested in it just because the game just like graphically and art style wise just looks so good. You know, they just really nail the Star Wars look. But EA's done a great job with that with all their Star Wars games. You know, Respawn with Jedi Fallen Order and DICE with the Battlefront games. And EA Motive, of course, did the campaign for Battlefront 2. So that's where they come in with all this. So this is their first Star Wars standalone game. I mean, the game looks good. If you're into that kind of dog fighting, space combat stuff, I think this is definitely a game that has a lot to offer. I'm actually a little jealous because it's going to be available on like PSVR and on PC VR platforms, so you can play the game entirely in VR. And I think that would probably be the ideal way to play this game. So I think this is one of those rare cases where it's like I think Xbox might be the worst place to play this game. I know usually like the most powerful and impressive version of the game's on Xbox, but Xbox doesn't have any VR support, so this is probably the last platform I'd want to play this game on. That being said, I don't even have any intent on playing this game, but there was an article that went up shortly after this event, a few days later, where EA CEO Andrew Wilson had an investor call, a fireside chat, where he kind of discussed some of this stuff in further detail. But he talked about, and I think this is the bigger story here, where he talked about how he and EA are looking to kind of double down on their partnership with Disney in regards to the Star Wars games, the Star Wars contract they have. He says that we're going to double down on that partnership. Disney continues to be very, very committed to the IP and to the canon. And Wilson also notes that he believes that there's still a strong hunger for Star Wars games and that it is a property worth continuing to pursue. He says, quote, we've got new generations of fans coming to the IP all the time. So our expectation is that we think there continues to be a really, really strong opportunity in around that relationship and the IP going forward. So I kind of my quick thoughts on this is kind of confirming what I said pretty recently about EA and the Star Wars IP, which is that EA looks at Star Wars with big dollar signs in their eyeballs like a cartoon, and they see it exactly the way they look at the NFL license, which is how can we continue to lock this property down to be exclusive to us? So, I mean, first things first, like this kind of potentially points to the EA Disney relationship with Star Wars being an indefinite thing. So originally we know it was signed in like 2013 or a little earlier, where it was like a 10-year contract where EA had the exclusive rights to the Star Wars IP for video games, with like rare exception like the Lego Star Wars games. But now it looks like this might just be a more indefinite thing, kind of like the NFL contract with EA, where EA just kind of gets to keep re-upping the contracts over and over again and pouring money into Disney's pockets. And I think that's what they're going to continue to do. So this is their way of basically saying, hey, we see Star Wars as a super lucrative thing. People keep buying Star Wars. It's a thing that doesn't go away in terms of popularity. I don't know how he says that in a world where people are super jaded and pissed off and tired about Star Wars right now, but I guess it also makes sense because as much as Star Wars fans want to say they're jaded and tired of Star Wars, Rise of Skywalker still did great at the box office. Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order still did great. You know, it's still one of the best-selling games of 2019, despite coming out at the tail end of the year. And, you know, that Mandalorian show on Disney Plus is the most obnoxious bullshit ever, where everyone's got a little Baby Yoda sticker on the back of their car. And so it's like, you know, it's one of those things where it's like, from a business perspective, how could you blame EA for wanting to do this when it's like the shit continues to make money for them? So, but at the same time, it's like, I don't know. EA is kind of the perfect, in the most like, in the least serving way to the fans. EA is kind of the perfect publisher to have the sole rights to the Star Wars franchise, right? Because they kind of treat Star Wars the same way Disney's been treating Star Wars, where they're just like, let's just milk the shit out of this franchise and just make everyone super jaded and exhausted of it, to the point where it's like, we'll just keep doing it as long as they keep spending money on it. Because that's really what Disney's done with Star Wars, which I hate to say because I'm a huge Disney fan, but I think they've kind of mistreated the property a little bit by just over milking the hell out of it. And it looks like they see a little bit of themselves in EA games, because it looks like they're going to continue to let EA have the sole rights to this IP for video games, and EA has a similar motive here, and no pun intended, not to kind of milk the hell out of this property. So a little disheartening, but also I guess not that much, because Battlefront 2 got turned around, people really liked it. Jedi Fallen Order was a pretty great game, and the Star Wars Squadrons game, while I don't give a shit about it and probably won't be playing it at any point ever, does look pretty solid. It looks like if you're into this kind of game, you'll be pretty pleased with it. So we'll see when the reviews pour in. I'm sure people will hate on it just because it's EA, but it does look pretty solid in all defense. But next up, we got a little sizzle reel where they showed FIFA 21 and Madden 21 trailers. And so we have another kind of story pertaining to this from that investor call where we learned that FIFA 21 will be released on October 9th this year, but no real release date has been given for a Series X version of the game, but we do know that there will be a Series X version. EA did announce a similar cross-generational release offer to what they are doing for Madden 21. So you'll remember at the Xbox May event, they did that whole Madden thing where they said, we're not doing smart delivery, but we got something similar to it we're doing. Well, they're doing the same thing for FIFA 21. So just for clarification, what that is, rather than participating in Microsoft's smart delivery system that allows owners of Xbox One games to automatically get Xbox Series X enhancements when they play their Xbox One owned games on their Series X, EA's dual entitlement system works a bit differently. So EA dual entitlement actually works for both Xbox and PlayStation, and allows owners of current generation games to upgrade to next generation versions at no additional cost. The only catch is that if the current generation game is physically owned on PS4 or PS4 disc, the user cannot upgrade to the PS5 unless they have a PS5 with a disc drive, which assumes that you'll have to put the PS4 disc in your PS5. Xbox One physical discs will be able to upgrade digitally, though, to the Xbox Series X, so you won't have to have a physical Xbox One disc, or you won't have to put a physical Xbox One disc in your Xbox Series X to do this, because of course, the future, and this is of course because the future is here, and it bleeds green, you bitches. So when the system was first teased for Madden 21 back a few weeks ago, many were under the impression that the dual entitlement offering or system would only be offered for a limited time from the date of the game purchase, but nothing from this newly released information has suggested that will still be the case or anything otherwise. So it seems like it might be an indefinite offer where if you buy the game, you can at any point upgrade it. Although I can't imagine that's the case. I'm sure there is a time limit on this. We just don't know what, if at all. The other big thing here is that this is a good move for, it seems like this is a pretty good consumer friendly move. And unless I'm reading this wrong, I'm guessing that if you are like a PS4 owner and next generation you buy a Series X instead of a PS5, you can upgrade to this Series X version, even though you only own the PS4 version. I'm not sure how that would work, but it seems like they're suggesting something similar like that. I could be totally wrong, and this could just be like Xbox upgrades to Xbox, PlayStation upgrades to PlayStation. That's it. But it seems like it's also a lot more flexible with the Xbox, where like it doesn't matter if it's physical or digital on your Xbox One, you can just upgrade to the Xbox Series X version digitally. Whereas with the PS5, you need to have like the disc plugged into your PS5, and you have to have the PS5, of course, with the disc drive to do that. So it seems like there's still some like technical details we don't quite understand yet about this, but we'll of course learn more in the coming months. This is one of those kind of annoying things because it's like, yeah, well, at least you'll technically be able to get these games on your Xbox through smart delivery. It sounds like it's going to be a little more roundabout and more of a headache. It sounds like it's going to be something like, I don't know, I just hope this isn't something like where you're like surrendering your Xbox One license to get it on your Series X or something like that. I hope it's kind of like smart delivery, where it's as easy as like, if you have it on one, you have it on both, and you can switch between them seamlessly. But we'll have to wait and see and learn more about this. But there is some kind of cross-generational support for this for these titles. So rest assured, you can buy them in August or September or whatever, and then get your Series X versions in the coming months. So there you go. Next, during the EA Play event, EA teased the upcoming Dragon Age game, Battlefield, Need for Speed, and EA Motive projects for next generation, the same way they teased Mass Effect Andromeda a few years back, which is to say they showed some concept art and developers vaguely talking about much of nothing. So this is where the show basically just like devolved into like nonsense. I don't know why EA is so big on doing this. They did this with Jedi Fallen Order 2 a few years ago. They really like this thing where they kind of vaguely prematurely announce things and just talk about them and get nothing done. This Dragon Age game is starting to be a little concerning because the rumors of this next Dragon Age game from BioWare have been going around for like almost like for 5 years plus now. Has it been that long? I feel like it's been at least 4 or 5 years now. So it's like the fact that we haven't really heard or seen anything about this Dragon Age game is kind of concerning. But also, I know they kind of announced the game before they even really started working on it, so maybe that's the issue here. But I don't know. I'm just like, why are we still talking about Dragon Age and not showing it? The last one was Dragon Age Inquisition, which was 2014. It's like it's been 6 years. Like, come on, either show a new Dragon Age game or shut up until you're ready to show something. But Battlefield, we know DICE's next big game is the next Battlefield, presumably Battlefield 6. We saw some renderings of like army men or something. It just, I don't know. It's not a game reveal. It's just them talking about nothing. They mentioned something about Need for Speed and EA Motive's next project, which is already weird because we already know EA Motive is still working on getting Star Wars Squadrons out the door. So they're kind of in the thick of a new project and they're already announcing their next game. But whatever, we will see more on all of that in the coming years because EA likes to really prematurely announce shit these days. So there's a look at stuff you won't see for years to come. And then finally, they rounded out the show by announcing something that after many years of loud fan demand, they are finally working on a new entry in the long dormant Skate franchise. The game was announced to be super early in development, so don't expect anything new for a few years. Before I really continue to dive into that, I almost feel like what happened here, since EA likes to announce shit before they should ever announce it, that what happened was like they saw the announcement of that Tony Hawk game a few weeks ago, that new one from Activision. They saw how the internet was like lit on fire with everyone being super pumped about Tony Hawk coming back, and then they were just like, fuck it, we'll just bring Skate back. It sounds like that's enough of a positive reinforcement to let us know that Skate would also be a welcome comeback, despite the fact that people have been begging for it for years. Or maybe it's just a coincidental thing, like when Guitar Hero and Rock Band both came back at the same time. But yeah, it's like they definitely announced this way prematurely. They didn't have anything to show for it, and they're basically like, hey, it's super early in development, and we don't even know what the game is. That's basically what they said. But in the days following the EA Play event, again, during that investor call, EA CEO Andrew Wilson was speaking with investors and answered some questions regarding the new Skate game. He says, basically, while noting that the game has officially been revealed, he goes, so for many people you think about skating as a starting point that may have appeal, but you start to think about the built-in user-generated content, exploration, and community on top of that, which expands the opportunities exponentially. This quote, I think is really vague and out of context. But I wasn't able to find all the information around it. But basically, this quote has led some to speculate that Skate might be heavily reliant on user-made content as opposed to like being a full game with missions and campaign content. I don't really believe that's what's happening here. I think there may be an emphasis on user-created content, but I think people are misreading this quote because I think what Andrew Wilson's getting at is he's saying like, skating is a lot more about like the sport and a lot more about like the culture around it and kind of the community around it. And so I think what he was saying is that like this game might try to capture aspects of, the exploration and that community and that user generated content that comes as a result of skating. How skating's more than just like dudes in semi-tight pants trying to do ollies and kickflips. It's also about like the fashion and the skate videos and the music and kind of like finding new places to skate and creating new shit. And I think what he's saying is like the game might try to have some like games as a service or open-ended online features that allow people to like kind of create and share content. And so they're saying that it might try to capture that skate culture and put it into a game rather than just making another game about skateboarding, which I think is pretty cool. But a lot of people are speculating, including IGN, that this means like the game might be super heavily reliant on user-made content. I don't think Andrew Wilson is saying that they're making, the skating equivalent of Super Mario Maker. I don't think that's what he meant. Although who knows, they might be. I just think he was saying there's going to be a large emphasis on trying to incorporate the personality and the skating culture within this game, whether that means like user created aspects, but also while bringing back the traditional Skate franchise. But that's all conjecture, so we'll have to wait and see on that. I know people are super excited that Skate's coming back, although this whole presentation was mostly just lauded and laughed at. So I get it. People hate EA, but that was the EA Play event, so we can kind of ignore that studio for about another year if that's what you'd like. I don't really hate EA as much as other people do. As I was telling Lethal Migraine a few weeks ago in the comments, it's one of those things where they're not ashamed, them and Activision as well. They're not ashamed to be a big company. They're here to make money. They make what sells. They're not really concerned about bending over backwards to cater to the loud minority game community when they know that their money is made from the quiet majority of gamers who just buy Madden all the time and buy FIFA all the time and happily give EA millions and millions of dollars every year. So it's just one of those things. But with that said, we will move into our next story here, which is a little bit of some more bad news, not as bad as Mixer shutting down, but CD Projekt Red have announced that Cyberpunk 2077 has once again been delayed, this time from its September 17th date to a new November 19th date, much closer to the launch of the Xbox Series X. In a letter from CD Projekt Red co-founder Marcin Iwinski, the head of studio, and Adam Badowski, he said, quote, "We have decided to move the launch of Cyberpunk 2077 from September 17th to November 19th. Those of you who are familiar with the way that we make games know that we won't ship something that is not ready. Ready when it's done, it's not just a phrase we say because it sounds right. It's something we live by, even when we know we'll take the heat for it. At the same time, we are fully aware that making such a decision costs us your trust, and trading trust for additional time is one of the hardest decisions a game developer can make. And despite we think it's the right decision for the game, we'd still like to apologize for making you wait longer. Our intention is to make Cyberpunk 2077 something that will stay with you for years to come. In the end, we hope you understand why we did what we did. At the time we were writing these words, Cyberpunk 2077 is finished both content and gameplay-wise, the quests, cutscenes, and skill items, all of the adventures Night City has to offer. It's all there, but with such an abundance of content and complex systems interweaving with each other, we need properly to go through everything, balancing the game mechanics, fixing a lot of the bugs. A huge world means a huge number of things to iron out, and we will spend the additional time doing exactly that. This week, journalists from all over the world are starting to independently play the game. We are eager and quite stressed to hear their opinions as well as see your reactions when they publish their previews right after the Night City Wire event on the 25th of June. We hope that this will satisfy some of your hunger for the game as we work to polish it for the November launch. Thank you." So I really, really love this letter. I love how transparent and just direct they are with their audience. And I think gamers will love it too, because this is what we've seen the gaming community time and time again do, is they just really love transparency more so than a lot of other communities where they really respect and eat that shit up. So let's finish up the story and then we'll jump into it. But CD Projekt Red is still set to hold their Night City Wire live event on June 25th, so by the time you're hearing this, the event's already taken place. The event will preview the game in greater detail, and despite launching close to the release of the next-gen consoles, CD Projekt Red has confirmed that while next-gen versions of the game are coming to both new consoles, they won't be arriving until 2021. Kaczynski continues, he says, "At this point, we're going to have a more robust update for the next gens, which we're planning to give free of charge to anybody who purchases PS4 or Xbox One versions. But in any case, you will be able to play the game on the next-gen consoles from the 19th of November when the game releases. And it will look better than that of the next-gen games. It will look better than that of next-gen games for that moment." So, first of all, a lot of people are probably reading into that saying, okay, so the next-gen consoles will both be out by November 19th. Probably, but I don't think that's what he was trying to say there, but just as a side note. But then, of course, Xbox Series X players will be given access to the next-gen version of the game through the smart delivery system, which was further detailed last week, as we learned. So yeah, all of this, again, I think they did a great job just being transparent. I personally don't give a shit how much they delay Cyberpunk. It's a game that I'm surprised how excited I am for it. Usually I'm not that crazy about like the big open world games that people are shitting their pants over. This is a rare example where I am. I really love the Cyberpunk aesthetic, and I think CD Projekt Red has nailed it more so than most other games that have done Cyberpunk have done it. I'm like, I always wanted to like Witcher, but I just don't like medieval fantasy and shit like that, or just like old Europe. It's just not a thing that interests me. But Cyberpunk is like, it's like Rockstar's GTA and Red Dead. Bethesda Game Studios has Fallout and Elder Scrolls. CD Projekt Red has a similar 1-2 thing right now where they've got Witcher and Cyberpunk. And Cyberpunk is definitely their open world game that really caters and speaks to me, and I'm super excited to jump in and play it. But at the same time, like, this is a game I'm in no rush to get my hands on, where it's like, when it comes out, I'll buy day one. I'm excited to try it. But at the same time, day one can be tomorrow, it can be in 3 months, it can be in a year. I don't really give a shit. Take their time. I love this kind of approach where they're just like, hey, we know we're going to hurt some of your trust. We know people are going to give a shit and be upset about this, but like, we just refuse to release a game that's anything less than polished and ready to go from our standards and our perspective. And I love how he even outlines, he's like, everything's done. The game's there, it's complete, the cutscenes are there, everything, but we're just not happy with the level of polish. I think that speaks so much to how confident they are in their vision and what it takes to make this game what it needs to be, and how much they believe in their vision, that they're saying, we're not day one patching this shit, we're not releasing it, fixing it over time, we're waiting until it's something we would be proud to share with our audience, and then we're giving it to you. So you're gonna have to wait a little longer. I know this game keeps getting delayed, but I for one, am like 100% like CD Projekt Red. You made a good argument. I'm in no rush. There are plenty of great games coming out this year. There's plenty of shit happening in the game sphere this year. You take your time and I'll play this. If anything, I think Cyberpunk would do better from like a longer delay. I think it would be great if they just delayed till next summer and just launched it simultaneously on previous generation hardware and next gen hardware, because I would like to just skip this on my Xbox One altogether and just play it on Series X next year once the initial launch hype has died down and Halo and all that stuff has kind of simmered down. If anything, the only downside this really provides is that now November is going to be super crowded with all the next gen stuff, and then with Cyberpunk coming out. So it does pose that kind of issue, but I think Cyberpunk's one of those things where it's like so highly anticipated and so people are so looking forward to it that it doesn't matter what hardware it's on, people are going to play this no matter what. It's going to sell great no matter what. So the good news is you'll be able to play on your PS5 and Series X, and you'll be getting smart delivery and upgraded versions in the coming months/year. So all good stuff. And by the time this shows up, we'll have seen that Night City Wire live event. So we'll have seen an extensive look and update on the game. So look forward to that. Our next story here, our little wrap-up stories. We're almost done here. But this is an interesting one. Earlier this week, Activision finally announced, after some leaks and rumors, that Crash Bandicoot 4, It's About Time, a brand new proper sequel to 1998's Crash Bandicoot 3 Warped, has been properly revealed and is coming out this year. The game is being developed by Toys for Bob, the team that supported Vicarious Visions with the Crash Insane trilogy that came out a few years ago, and they also took on Spyro Reignited trilogy that came out a few years ago as well. They're also probably most notably known for the creation of the very popular, now dormant Skylanders franchise, which of course sparked the Disney Infinity franchise, rest in peace. But yeah, this Crash 4 will be out on Xbox One on October 2nd for $60, so it'll be competing with that Star Wars Squadrons, but this is something I'm more inclined to play personally. Yeah, this is awesome. I love how they kind of just shit on the Universal Vivendi Crash games from the early 2000s that weren't made by Naughty Dog, by just calling this one Crash 4 as if there was nothing after Crash 3, even though those PS2 Universal ones came out. So that's kind of funny. But yeah, I mean, if you've seen the trailer, this looks a lot more like an evolution of classic Crash Bandicoot rather than the kind of Universal Crash games that came out in the early 2000s on PS2 that were a little more like liberal with the formula of the Crash games, a little more traditional platformer. So this is cool. It's exciting. I think a lot of people are pretty excited to see this coming. I don't think it's surprising at all. I think obviously the release of the Crash Insane trilogy and the Spyro Reignited trilogy was obviously a testing ground to see if people were just talking about their nostalgia for these franchises or if they were genuinely interested in bringing them back. And I think the sales of those trilogies proves that, yeah, people want this shit back. So with that said, I fully expect in a few years we'll also see a Spyro 4 or a new Spyro game much in the way we're seeing a new Crash game. So that's the one I'm more excited for. I'm definitely more of a Spyro fan. Definitely love that old Insomniac shit more than that old Naughty Dog shit. But either way, I'm excited for all of this stuff. I'm looking to play this game. I think it looks pretty good. You can check out the trailer. There's new characters you get to play as, but it very much looks like classic Crash Bandicoot gameplay, but updated for a modern era. So this is exciting stuff. I love seeing this old kind of character platformer, mascot platformer stuff come back. It's a stuff that I'm really nostalgic for, that I really enjoyed as a child. So I'm glad that the games industry is diverse enough now to where we can have like the character platformers other than just Mario, and we can have the nitty-gritty Last of Us games, and we can have the Halos, and we can just have so much, diversity in game types. Everything from the lighthearted to the serious to the platformer to the shooter to the, battle royale. So it's really cool to just see this kind of all meld and be able to coexist today, rather than these specific eras where like only these types of games are being made. Only these types of games are being made. I understand like right now, like the shared world shooters and the light MMOs and the hero shooters and the battle royales are kind of the thing that define this generation in particular, along with, making everything open world. But it's also really cool to see that this generation's been, indies have seen so much success, and the kind of revivals of so many classic franchises have seen so much success that it just feels like, especially towards the end of this generation, that basically any genre, any kind of game is possible these days, and that there's just an audience for a little of everything, and I love that. But now we're just gonna wrap up with our final story here, which is that WB owned Rocksteady. Speaking of WB, the team behind the popular Batman Arkham games is reportedly working on a Suicide Squad game, as mentioned in some new domain name registrations. According to Eurogamer, the London studio has been working on the project for years, and the Suicide Squad Kills the Justice League domain is potentially the game's full title, as well as a summation of its content. Eurogamer also says that the domain was registered by WB Interactive. The Gotham Knights does refer to WB Montreal's long-rumored Batman Court of the Owls game, which we pretty much know is a thing, and that both games will be shown in some respects at the DC Fandom event, which is taking place on August 22nd, so maybe we'll see the games there. Yeah, I don't want to get too much into this one just because this is not like my forte, is getting into like the Batman games and all that shit. I mean, it's about time we see what Rocksteady is working on. The rumor after that last Batman Arkham Knight game, the rumor was that they were moving away from the superhero stuff. They were moving away from Batman, and they were going to make something totally different. And they made that Batman Arkham VR game for, I think, PSVR. But that was the last thing they made, so it's been a while, and they're long overdue for an announcement on what they've been working on. So it doesn't surprise me that they're ready to announce something sooner rather than later. But what does surprise me is that it's still going to be DC. It's still going to be, in this realm. So Suicide Squad, I'm sure, if anyone can make Suicide Squad not lame, it's going to be these guys. I didn't see Birds of Prey. I heard it was pretty good, but I don't really personally care about anything DC. So I'm just excited that maybe people will be able to have a cool Suicide Squad game. I have full faith that Rocksteady will do good by it, just because Rocksteady has a great track record. But yeah, I mean, this is one of those things where it's like, because of how poorly kept the secret of the WB Montreal game with Batman Court of the Owls has been, and how they even teased the fucking game but still haven't properly announced it, which is just mind-blowing that they teased it like months ago and haven't announced it. It's just like, okay, well then this is probably also true. This because WB is like doing some crazy shit right now with their announcements. I assume this is all because COVID has affected it, that they were going to announce some shit at E3. Yeah, I mean, considering how poorly kept the Batman Court of the Owls secret was, I'm sure that this is just as likely to be real, and that we will probably see these both at the DC Fandom event, which makes sense. It's like, if they're not going to do their own E3 event, and now they're not going to be on stage with like a Sony or a Microsoft, so they got to find some event to fit this in at, so why not something like this? So hopefully we'll hear about these games soon, and if you're looking forward to it, good for you. But that's going to do it for all of our big news stories of the week. Now we will just jump into our important enough news stories important enough to make the podcast, but not important enough to warrant their own discussion, of which we have a couple of these to just kind of rattle off. We've got Marvel's Avengers getting a free upgrade on PS5. Anyone who buys the game on PS4 will get the enhanced version of the PS5 game at no additional cost. But what does this mean for Xbox, as this is an Xbox podcast? Well, it will also support the free upgrade on Xbox Series X for Xbox One owners, but through using the the easy and intuitive smart delivery feature. Next, we got that IGN reports Earth Defense Force 6 has officially been revealed by series publisher D3, which with the game expected to launch in 2021. Alongside that, voxel-based spin-off Earth Defense Force World Brothers is also on the way. The 2021 date is a suggestion that Earth Defense Force 6 will land on next-gen consoles, which will, of course, launch this holiday season, but no official platform for the game has been announced just yet. So that's like a asterisk if that one's relevant, because Earth Defense Force has been on Xbox before, but it's usually pretty heavily associated with the PlayStation ecosystem. So it may be on Xbox, it may not be. I hope it is. It really should be. At this point, you think you just want to get your game out on everything, especially if it's not too hard to make Xbox and PlayStation SKUs, considering the architecture isn't that, different, but whatever. Next, we've got that Bloodstained Curse of the Moon 2, the sequel to 2018's Bloodstained Ritual of the Night, Kickstarter 8-bit spin-off bonus game, will be, quote, coming soon to Xbox One and PC. So look forward to that. Next, we've got Undead Labs announced that State of Decay 2 is getting a crossover promotion with fellow Xbox Game Studios title Sea of Thieves. So look into that for more details. And then lastly, we've learned that today Xbox Game Pass Twitter account has revealed that the following titles will be joining the service soon. First, we got The Messenger, which is really exciting. I want to play that. Streets of Rogue, Nightcall, and Observation, which will be coming to both console and PC, whereas the other ones are just coming to console. I'm really excited to play The Messenger. That's a game I've had on my list for a while, so I'll definitely check that out. I haven't really heard much about the other titles, but hopefully something to look forward to. Now, of course, we will jump into our fan favorite segment where we talk about the new game releases on Xbox for the week, but only by talking about the title of the game and the picture associated with it, not by reading the explanation or seeing what the game's actually about. So this week we got 10 new games to go through, so let's just jump right in. Our first one here is called SpongeBob SquarePants Battle for Bikini Bottom Rehydrated, releasing on June 23rd, so the game's already out now. And so I know I'm not going to pretend like I don't know what SpongeBob is. Everyone knows what SpongeBob is. It's that Disney cartoon about the sponge with the growing nose and everything. But what I don't understand is this is not the SpongeBob I remember, because this SpongeBob is wearing a Viking helmet and he's floating. And so I understand, like, okay, you're a sponge or you're a sea creature, so you can probably jump and float in the water. That makes sense. But I don't know if you've ever seen a fucking sponge before, but this is my hang up on SpongeBob. It's like, listen, go fill your sink up with water right now, plug it, and take like the sponge you use to wash your dishes. Riddle me this, as Mr. David White might say. So you got the sponge, and whether it has no water or it's full of water, that sponge is not gonna float in the water like SpongeBob is doing here. It's either gonna it's just gonna float at the top, whether it's full of liquid or not. Sponges float, they don't sink. So my thing is, like, how the fuck is SpongeBob floating in the water or standing on the ocean floor when he's a sponge? Shouldn't he be floating to the surface? And so I think to myself, holy shit, SpongeBob isn't just any sponge. He's like a spiritual sponge. So maybe SpongeBob is a whole allegory for, like, like the holy cleansing, how sponge is a tool used for cleaning, and Bikini Bottom is a place we know that's full of greed. See Mr. Krabs, vanity. See Squidward. And gluttony, see Patrick, and maybe SpongeBob as a character acts as a cleansing utensil, or someone who represents purity and cleanliness, and he's here to absolve Bikini Bottom of its sins and its transgressions and its dirt, its filth, its grime, if you will. And so I don't know. I don't know anything about this game. I don't know if it's going to be good, but that concept alone got me really interested, or rehydrated, if you will, about the SpongeBob SquarePants universe, because I just really love the idea of that kind of religious subtext that exists in this children's cartoon, and I just never expected Disney to kind of have that nuance to one of their cartoons. So definitely check that game out. That's just a pretty cool realization I had. But our next game here is called Assetto Corsa Competizione, which I think is Italian for not as good as Forza. So don't play this game. It looks like a stupid racing game. This guy doesn't know how to race for shit because he's tailing the guy in front of him. And everyone knows if you want to win in a race, you don't go behind the guy in front of you. You go in front of them. So this is a dumb racing game for dumb people. I think the name is Italian, so the Italians are dumb, and this game is dumb. But you can go ahead and play that if you like losing, if you like racing games where it's about losing. Our next game here is called A Summer with Shiba Inu, which is fucking adorable. It looks like a game where you play as this little Japanese dog, and he wears a little leather jacket. He looks like a street punk dog, which is so fucking cute. And he's basically on the streets of Tokyo, and all the NPCs around him are just dogs. So clearly, this is a nice storybook game where children learn about street dogs. I assume the reason why he's wearing a coat is because even though these dogs don't have homes, they don't have places to go, they do have clothing to keep them warm, which just reminds me that, there are a lot of great organizations you can be donating to. There's a lot of great funds out there to help, stop, support animals, bring them to no-kill shelters and kind of find good homes for these animals. But if you don't have it if you don't have the room or the ability in your life to bring an animal into your home, I think this game offers an important message that it's not realistic to assume that every human can adopt a stray dog or a stray cat and bring it into their home and give it a home and give it a family. But it is a really realistic expectation that we can clothe every dog. So, one thing I think we got to accept, because it's just a fact of life, is that there are going to be stray dogs. That's just a thing. You're going to walk around sometimes and see dogs that unfortunately don't have homes to go to. But why can't that stray dog have a nice leather jacket to keep it warm and at the very least keep it stylish, So this is a really cool game that kind of raises awareness to the trials of animals and the fact that they too get cold. Underneath all that fur, they're just shivering, cold, lonely mammals, just like we are. So I really love this game. I really love this message. It supports something that goes unheard of quite often, which is that, not everyone needs a place to call home, but we all need clothes to keep us warm, and sheltered. So definitely find a way to donate to your local animal shelter and provide some coats to dogs or something like that. Our next game here is called Octonaut. This is a game that's out today. It is a game where it's in a 2D environment. It looks like Kid Icarus, but the Kid Icarus sprite has been replaced with a cartoon octopus. So this is like some Japanese tentacle porn shit, spiritual successor to Kid Icarus. I'd much rather just have a new Kid Icarus game, but I guess if you're a pervert, you might enjoy this version of the game better. We've got Nightcall as our next game. This game looks really stupid because it just shows a guy's face in the rearview mirror of a car. I'm all for pushing the boundaries of gaming and everything, but if you expect, I understand the right analog stick controls the camera, but you're taking it a step too far if the right analog stick controls the rearview mirror camera perspective of a car. It's oh, come on. So I'm supposed to play this game now using only the camera perspective of the rear view mirror. So it's okay, well, what about when your character's not in the car? Did you think about that? You can't always control, you're not going to see where your character's going unless he's in the car. So you got to play the whole game from the car to see your character, or it's just such short-sighted thinking. And I'm so tired of indie developers thinking that, they're pushing boundaries and they're being creative and innovative with this shit. But it's you're not being cute. No one's buying this. Fucking give it up. I'm not going to play a game where the only camera you can control is the rear view mirror of a car. Especially a game where you presumably have to get out on foot from time to time. That's going to be a fucking pain in the ass to play. But whatever. If you're into that kind of indie darling shit, you can go ahead and play that. Our next game here is called Control the Foundation. It's a DLC. It's not a full game, but it is out June 25th. This game, I really don't understand what it's about. There's a woman. She's floating. So I assume it's a Captain Marvel spin-off game, but she's also using telekinesis powers to make a man fly in the air. I don't know that this control is malicious, at all. For all we know, this is a guy who's always wanted to fly, and she's just helping him achieve his dream. So this could quite possibly be a game about helping people achieve their dreams of wanting to fly and explore whatever this toxic dome waste plant is. But that game looks stupid. And our next game here is called Tower of Time. Speaking of time, we're running out of it, so we will skip this game because it looks like some Japanese turn-based RPG game straight from the PlayStation 1. The textures quite literally look like a PlayStation 1 game, so if that was intentional, you're not being cute. No one likes it. Our next game here is called Yes, Your Grace. So there's a king, there are some peasants. These peasants have an inventory, and within that inventory there's weaponry, there are masks, and there is money. And I think what this game basically is doing is the whole social commentary on, COVID and social distancing, saying that, there's money to be made for those who go out and entertain, but there's also death to be had for those who risk going out for entertainment, because you've got the money, you've got the entertainment logo, and you've got the sword. So it's this whole kind of this whole kind of cycle of how, you know, people go out to spend money to support businesses to be entertained, but they risk getting COVID and getting killed by swords, because we all know that's how COVID attacks is. First you get COVID, and then the next day you get stabbed by a sword, and that's pretty much how it goes for most people. So definitely a little bit of an insensitive game to be releasing at a time like now, and I don't really understand what this like medieval Europe, this medieval England looking setting has to do with it all. But there you go. If you're looking for a game to remind you of the atrocity of the horror of the pandemic we're facing every day, that's a game you can play. Then we got Dungeons 3 Complete Edition, which just looks like Warcraft 3. So if you're looking for a game that looks like Warcraft 3 and also has a 3 in the title, go play Warcraft 3. And then our final game here is called Conan Chop Chop. This is a game where you play as strong cavemen or barbarian men with really sticky legs. This is, I don't even know what to say. This is just CG art. This is just concept art. This is like, there's no game. There's no picture of gameplay. This is literally just concept art. So if you want to spend like $20 on an indie game that just downloads and gives you concept art, you can do that. Or you can just hold out for Halo Infinite, which is what I'm going to do. So that's going to do it for our podcast this week, guys. Thank you so much for sticking through. We're at the 2-hour mark. Fuck me. I'm going to be up all night editing this, but happy to do it because I really do enjoy doing this podcast, enjoy saying whatever the hell I just said for the past 2 hours, and appreciate your support as always, guys. Remember to leave very positive reviews on iTunes. Remember to subscribe on YouTube. Follow me on Instagram at Jesse_DeRosa. Follow me on Twitter. This week I will be tweeting from the Beats by Dr. Dre account. I'm very into, I've, women, hide your children. I've become an audiophile, so I'm very into audio. I'm very into Beating by Dr. Dre. And yeah, so I will be tweeting from that account all week. Be sure to look out for me. You'll know when I'm the one tweeting from the account because I'll do a little PS at the end of every tweet. I'll put PSXO, like Xbox on. So if you're looking to see if I'm tweeting, just follow the Dr. Dre Beats Twitter account and you'll see me there. Otherwise, speaking of beats, speaking of beating, speaking of being beaten and music, Eric will now play us off with one of his beautiful songs. So take it away, Eric, and we'll see y'all next week.